And here is one from Eric on plastic tip bullets. So, yes. Eric is another patron who contacted me and said, in response to a previous video I did mentioning the plastic tipped bullets, or maybe it was just a Facebook post that I did on it, but I mentioned that ballistic tips by Nosler in the late 90s, I believe, were the first ones. Maybe that was in the early 2000s, getting kind of fuzzy there in the background. And when those came out, it was like, what's this, a plastic tip bullet? So that was my first memory of plastic tip bullets. But several people wrote in to say, no, the plastic tip bullets really came out in Canada quite a while back from the Dominion cartridge manufacturers. And I remember Dominion with 22 long rifles when I was a kid hunting jackrabbits. They were sort of the least expensive. They were probably 5 to 10 cents less a box than the Winchesters and the Remingtons and Federals. So I would often pick those up. And then Eric here not only agreed with that and said CIL was one of the company names that made this Dominion ammunition. He said they were making these bullets and he called them the Saber Tip. And they were already out in the mid-1960s, and he sent me photographs of them. I'll have my team here. Silas, can you put up some pictures for the people who are watching this on YouTube? They can see this, and you'll see by the box, Old Dominion's yellowish box that was popular back in the 1960s. It's pretty obviously an old box of ammo. And then the bullets in the box of this photo that Eric sent would obviously, they look fairly old too, and you can clearly see they've got some kind of a plastic or polymer or Delrin tip on them. And so that's kind of cool to see that, wow, way back in the 60s, someone was doing this, and it apparently never really caught on. And then Nosler must have known about it and remembered it from the old days, and they decided to revive it. And then another response I need to make for a lot of folks who wrote in on this photograph that I put on my Facebook page, Ron Spomer Outdoors Facebook. I had fired some, I'm pretty sure they were Federal plastic tip bullets in a 308. And the bullet at the bottom of the magazine that was getting battered around with the recoil from shooting shot after shot. I generally shoot the first round and maybe the second one, and then you top off and you shoot some more. And when I pulled it out, I was really shocked to see that the tip had gotten kind of, people accused me of putting a belt grinder sander on it or something to shave it down, but it was damaged a little bit and kind of fuzzed out weirdly. And I just thought that was a little bit unusual. And I had seen other plastic tipped bullets get a little bit of damage to them. They'll dent a little bit. So they're not perfect in my experience for holding a perfect sharp tip. They can get damaged. And the reason I say this is because the reason they were brought out was back in the old days when we had lead exposed tip spire point bullets. That lead would easily get damaged. Pushing them into the magazine or in and out of the chamber, they would sometimes drag and get shaved off a little bit. But the worst problem was the battering in the magazine. They sort of float in that metal box magazine. So under recoil, they're slamming back and forth. And that can damage the tips. It blunts them. And the longer you leave them in there, the more shots you fire, the more of a flat-nosed bullet you end up with, which is not something you're too pleased to have. So that's why they came up with these hard tips. Now, other ways that bullets are made with harder tips to retain their shape is by having what Remington called the bronze point, which is kind of a bronze cap over the lead exposed tip. So the lead's no longer exposed. Winchester did a similar one with the silver tip. And I believe initially they actually used silver. When that got kind of expensive, they went to aluminum, which wasn't quite as effective as preventing the battering, but it was pretty good. So now all the rage, of course, are the polymer tips. And there are different kinds of polymer. Polymer means it's a polyester something or other, a plastic of some kind. But some are harder and more durable than others in various ways. So I would imagine the different companies that make these different tips try different recipes to come up with some that don't dent as easily as others, and some of them fray a little more easily or maybe crack. I mean, I heard from folks who said they've seen everything from intact plastic tips on the far side of the game animal that they'd shot, meaning or suggesting at least that it's really durable. But then there's others saying that they find pieces or they find them at the bottom of their ammo box because they've broken off or they've pulled out, all sorts of things. And there's just sort of in common with what you would expect over the years with millions of rounds of ammunition. Something is going to happen to those bullets. And you just see it all over time. But just something to be aware of. I'm not running down anyone's polymer tip bullets. I use a lot of them and have had great success with them. It's interesting to note how long they've been around and that there are different types and they can work very well, and sometimes they can kind of fail. But, don't get too freaked out if that plastic tip is a little bit damaged. It does not do a heck of a lot to mess up your ballistic performance until you're quite a ways down range. Many tests have been made shooting for accuracy with damaged tips, and at 100 to 200 yards, you really don't notice much of a difference at all. Now, if you were target shooting beyond 300 yards and wanted to really be precise, then it's going to start to have an effect, and it will increase drag a little bit too. So it all adds up.